All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is Monday, October 13th, year of our Lord, 2025. Allegedly, this is Thanksgiving in Canada, but who cares? But in any case, if you're Canadian, happy Thanksgiving. You know, good for you. But it's not Thanksgiving yet. Just thought I'd tell you that. Let's begin. Well, before we begin, let me just get into the Jets just a little bit. Oh man, this is the best Jets season that I've ever seen. It's got everything. It's got incompetence. It's got frustration. It's got poor quarterback play. It's got a little bit of teasing where you think they're going to be good, but then they're not. It's got it all. And yesterday, the Jets head coach has shown himself to be totally incompetent. And the best part is, as you understand, the New York media, they're villains, right? They're villains. But this guy is so bad that he's got me defending the media now. The media starts asking him some questions about the quarterback and why, maybe are you considering a change and stuff like that. Totally legitimate questions when your quarterback stinks as much as Justin Fields does. And the head coach, Aaron Glenn, starts arguing with them. Like, what kind of question is that? How dare you? Stuff like that. And as everybody knows, when you get into fights with the New York media, it's very difficult to win. And these are totally legitimate questions, and he can't believe that they're asking them all this stuff. It's very, very funny. The press conference was hilarious and all of that. So the Jets are 0-6. I personally don't see how they can win any games. Highly likely they'll win a couple at least. But this season's got it all. And if, for a Jets fan like me, who is happy when they win and happy when they lose, especially when it's in a epic, colossal, hilarious fashion, this really couldn't be going better. So that's that. Let's get into the video today. Today, we are going to comment on the H1B Heretic again. So let's go. All right, H1B Heretic, Daniel Keene, Keenstar, Daniel Keene. Daniel Keene reached out to me on Signal not too long ago, and gave me a little bit of insight into the situation. He seems like a good guy. I got to be honest, Daniel Keene. I didn't know about him before this, but seems like a good guy. And I watched most of this Conversations That Matter interview with Daniel Keene, about an hour of content. Man, this story is it's just so familiar to me on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's just absolutely wild. But I wanted to show you just really just this is the dream world of J.D. Greer's new method for dealing with the culture war. Gospel boldness, but also gospel centrality. That kind of thing. This is what it looks like in real life. You know what I mean? You've got to be very timid about anything right wing. But then if there's something that's a little too right wing, then you get really upset and you bring the full weight of gospel love onto people. And of course, gospel love really looks a certain way all the time. So this guy, again, if you remember, he got kind of kicked out of his church. I don't know if he got fully excommunicated, but might as well have, for his position on H-1B visas and Indian immigration. And I wanted to show you the post that he posted that kicked off this whole firestorm, just so you can see kind of what we're dealing with here. And I think it'll give you a window into a lot of how these guys think. It's very interesting, so let's begin. This is John Harris looking very serious, and Daniel Keene.
Indians, as reflected by essentially my tone of my X post and in general approach.
Well, I want to show that.
So what he's saying is that they think that he's got some kind of racism and he hates Indians, and the way that they know that is because of the tone of his X post. Not really so much about what he said, it's about how he said it. And that's their proof that this guy hates Indians. You know what I mean? So let's watch the post.
Now, so people understand what you're talking about. This is the post, the video that you put on X. Okay, now that everyone's seen this video, what can you tell me about this? What were you thinking when you posted it?
All right,
Yeah.
so they saw the video. They're having a street party with the drums and the chanting and all this stuff, all to honor a demon. Okay, in America, they are closing down streets, gathering together so they can worship a demon. There you go. Let's let Daniel Keene explain himself a little bit.
Yeah, like so this the post and the video was not uh it was something that has been a growing conviction for me since I've moved back here to DFW, seeing the change and the effects of the immigration policies have had, specifically in this region, really in this like basically 5 mile radius of my house. But yeah, the video. So what you saw on the video is actually there's a celebration that day, a Hindu celebration where they worship Ganesh, and so you can hear like the beating of the drums. And they've got basically they've got like a table, they've got a Ganesh idol on the table, and they're just drumming drums, blocking the road. And so it was actually my wife was going to just pick up McDonald's for my 4-year-old, and she was like, you know, this is crazy. These policies are affecting, like I can't even drive down the road right now.
Yeah.
And so the post in the comment on the post was something like, typical view in my neighborhood outside Dallas. We have to end the H-1B visas now. I want my kids to grow up in America, not India. And that line was the main concern. I want my kids to grow up in America, not India, that the elders took as particularly concerning.
Yeah.
And
so let's stop there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I could get to in this video, which I might do a few more videos about this, because this is such an interesting case study. You know, a teachable moment, you might say, about how what Big Eva thinks the church should be like. You know, so you got the video, of course, and that's one thing. You know, the elders, they probably didn't like that he shared the video, but they didn't really take too much issue with that. Where they took issue is where he said, I want my kids to grow up in America, not India. And the tone of that shows that Daniel Keene is a tremendous racist. He hates Indians, you know, as anyone with ears to hear can hear it, right? And I got to be honest with you, this is what you're going to be dealing with all the time, because if you take a step back, right? And you know, look, I grew up in New England. My ears are primed to hear racism in everything. We've talked about this many times on the channel. But when you take a step back and say, let's see, he wants his kids to grow up in America, not India, okay? That is actually a very mild way to put what he's attempting to say, right? It's very mild. But, you know, I can understand you grew up in New England, you know, you hear, oh my goodness, that must be racist, right? But here's the point, though. Like, the problem with what Daniel Keene did is he said it out loud, right? He said that out loud. But the truth of the matter is that pretty much every Big Eva stooge and goon and people that would be so troubled with this statement actually believe the same thing. They just don't say it out loud. You're not supposed to say that kind of stuff. You can believe it. You can act on it. You can do, you know, the things that you do that, you know, demonstrate you believe the same thing, but you can't say it. The minute you say it, that means that you hate Indians, right? Obviously. And the way I know this is because of the habits of so many of these Big Eva guys. Like, they live in probably typically white communities. Sometimes they're even gated, you know? They live in neighborhoods that don't contain a lot of Indians, right? They do that on purpose. They do that on purpose. You need to understand, when you're out there, you're shopping for real estate, you know, you're on Zillow and stuff like that, and you look at the different statistics and stuff, and you're like, oh, and they say, oh, you got to find a good school district. You know, I mean, everybody knows what that means. That means, you know, you're looking for essentially a white neighborhood, right? But you can't say it that way. You got to say, I'm looking for a good school district, right? But you're doing the same thing. You want your kids to grow up in an area that is a particular way. And none of that requires that you hate Indians, but as long as you don't say it. If you say it, then you hate Indians, right? But everybody acts this way. All of his pastors likely act this way when they're making decisions about what schools to put their kids in, or what areas to live in, or where to go on a holiday and stuff like that. Everyone's making the same decisions that Daniel Keene is making, except you can't say it. Because if you say it, then people might not like you anymore. You're racist, that kind of thing. And the thing is, like, you got to consider what's happening here too, right? What's happening in the video that he posted. We've got a whole bunch of people in public worshiping a demon statue, right? And they're banging their drums, and they're doing whatever rituals that they do and all this kind of stuff. Evil stuff, right? Evil. And pretty much what Daniel's saying is, I don't like the fact that my kids are growing up in an area where this is normal. This is normalized. They have the right to do it. We got to protect their right to do it. It's one of our founding documents, freedom of religion. Every Baptist believes in freedom of religion. Like, he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a situation, not that he's, concerned that they're going to come home from school, with a little Ganesh statue and worship Ganesh in their room secretly. That's not really the concern. The concern is that it's going to normalize it for them. Evil practices, in your face evil too. Like, this is run-of-the-mill, like, obvious idolatry, right? Obvious idolatry. We're not talking about that fake idolatry that, you buy too many fishing poles and you've got the idol of fishing now. Like, that's the fake stuff that Big Evil gets off on trying to make you feel bad about, right? That's that fake stuff. We're talking about actual idolatry. Like, you bow down to the statue, you bang the drum, you do your rituals, you chant, all this kind of stuff. Actual idolatry. Like, I don't really want my kids to be in an environment where that's normalized. It's just they're worshiping idols again. We're just going to get McDonald's, and there's the word idol worshipers. That's not a good thing for your children, and it's okay to say, I don't actually like this, and we should probably stop it. And I don't want my kids growing up in an area where, if you notice, it's not that there's a bunch of dark people around. It's not that there's a bunch of Indians around. No, it's about, I don't really want to be in an area where it's like, it's normal, common to see people worshiping idols in the streets publicly. That's a mild take. That's mild. That should be the obvious automatic stance of every Christian. It's not good that public worship of idols is normalized. That's not a good thing. That should be an easy one. That's a softball. That's the kind of one that you get the softball question that you knock it out of the park to make you look good. Like, that's an easy, obvious take for any Christian. But somehow we've gotten ourselves so twisted up that now that's troubling, that's problematic, that's concerning. Everybody knows this, right? Like think to yourself, chances are Daniel Keene's pastors wouldn't let their kids watch an R-rated movie, right? Or even like a cartoon, right? That has some gay characters in it, right? It's not R-rated, but there's gay characters and stuff like that. That happens on Netflix all the time and different, Disney movies, whatever. They wouldn't let their kids watch it. Well, why? Why won't you let your kids watch it? What are you afraid of? Well, what they're afraid of is that the way it's presented is as if it's normal. It's totally normal for two girls to kiss, right? It's totally normal for these things to happen. And basically it's turning debauchery and degeneracy into something that's normal and maybe even good, maybe even loving. And so you don't let your kids watch that because you understand they're impressionable, and what they perceive as normal has a big effect on their lives in the future. Like, every Christian knows that. Well, why wouldn't that apply to literal demon worship? Of course it applies. Of course it applies. So this take from Daniel Keene is not only is it correct, but it's mild. It's mild. He could have said something a lot more aggressive, and it still would have been correct. But not in Big Eva land. Not in Big Eva land, because these things are outside of what we're allowed to talk about. See, Big Eva has this group of things that you're allowed to say, and a certain way you're allowed to say them, usually very apologetically. You're allowed to say them, and if you step outside of that, then you're unloving, and it can reveal your racist heart and all of these things. And think about how twisted up you have to be. Where some Christian, just a regular guy, Daniel Keene doesn't look like he's exceptional or a firebrand. In fact, I encourage you to watch this video from John Harris, Conversations That Matter. It's called The Trails Church Disfellowships in H1B Heretic. I encourage you to watch it because it becomes so clear that Daniel Keene is just a normal guy. He's just a regular guy. He's not a firebrand. He's not trying to cause trouble. He's not trying to divide up the church and confuse people. He's just living his life. He's a normal guy. Think about how twisted up you have to be where a normal guy goes, man, look at this. He's cut to the heart. He sees all of this demon worship around him, and he's like, I mean, where am I? Am I in Mumbai? Or am I in Dallas? And he's like, I'm in Dallas. I don't like this. This isn't good. And for all the other reasons why H1Bs are a problem, this is actually one of the core ones, right? Because it's changing our Dallas. We're talking about Dallas, Texas. It's changing the makeup of Texas so much that they're worshiping demons in the streets. They've got an idol, a literal idol of a demon, and they're worshiping him in the streets. And it's normal. Just another day. And you hear that normal guy say, I don't like all this demon worship. I raised my kids here. I'm not really interested in this demon worship being public. And they say, wow, you're going to have to find another church. Because at this church, we're loving. Think about how twisted you have to be to require, as part of love, Christian love, that you see these demon worshipers and you can't say anything. You can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? You can't talk about how degenerate it is. It's like, I was this is and we'll talk more about Daniel Keene in another video. But I was in Sunday school this past Sunday, and we were talking about the fear of God, and using, I think, Calvin's Institutes, where the fear of God as the Creator, and then of course there's also the fear of God as Redeemer, and that you can't have one before the other, like or one instead of the other. Like, it can't just be all Redeemer, because there's also a fear of God as the all-powerful, the Almighty. He created you. He could certainly take you out. Like, there's that kind of fear. But then there's also the fear of God, like a loving Father, and one that's gracious towards you, and He redeems you. He saves you. He's your friend. There's that kind of fear as well. And if you only have fear of God as a Creator, then God is kind of cold to you, right? But if you only have God as the Redeemer, or God as the Redeemer, then there's kind of like a lack of respect. There's kind of a lack of discipline, and all of that. And so, and it's like, and of course, God's like a loving Father, right? And so my kids, they fear me in a few different ways. And, of course, they do respect what I say, and, they fear the consequences if they don't. But they also know that I'm very gracious and very patient and all these kinds of things. And so, Luther, Martin Luther, when he was, writing his stuff and coming to the knowledge of the faith, like, he had the fear of God as the Creator down pat. Like, he was afraid of God. But he didn't really understand God the Redeemer as much, and so he kind of really emphasized a lot of that stuff in his writing. And I think that there's a big disconnect in modern evangelicalism, right? Where we want to present God as this loving Redeemer, full of grace and stuff like that, and that's all very, very good. But we live in a time where probably the big hole in our understanding of God, collectively as a people, as a country, is that there's really no fear of God as the creator, right? There's no fear of God as the Almighty, as the one who demands things of you, expects things of you. He created you and he can take you out. Like that kind of fear that is like a kind of a scary type of a fear as well. Like we're missing that. And some people, they pretend like God doesn't exist. And we all know that's just a cope, right? That's a cope. They do fear God, but they don't like feeling that fear, so they just pretend like he's not really there. It's a cope, right? And then, of course, there's other people that they understand, God, God's a God of grace, and Jesus died on the cross and stuff like that, but like they don't really do what he says, In fact, they would call that you're like a Pharisee if you care too much about doing what God wants you to do. Like, and they're all confused about what a Pharisee really is, but there's no fear of God to do the things that he requires, to do the things he says, right? And that certainly applies to Hindus. They don't fear the Lord. They have no fear of God. They're worshiping idols, literal demons in the streets. They don't fear the Lord, right? And I wonder sometimes, like, are we willing to do what needs to be done to put the fear of God in people? Right? Because that, like, everyone thinks that God loves them, but very few people fear the Lord. Very few people fear God as a creator. And that requires a certain tone, right? To put the fear of God in someone, that requires a certain kind of tone. It requires a certain emphasis that, quite frankly, big evil leaders, they just are incapable or unwilling to do that. I remember hearing one guy saying how he didn't like the John Edwards sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, because, there's no gospel in it. There's no gospel in it. And it's just like, because to him, the only legitimate thing to talk about with God is how he redeems sinners. That's the only thing you can talk about. If you're not talking about that, you're not doing the right thing. And I think that Daniel Keene, even with his very mild take about, man, they're literally worshiping idols in the street. Like, I don't want my kids growing up around that. Mild. That's a mild take. Like that, the reaction that he got from that shows that quite frankly, Christians are not willing to do what needs to be done. Like, you have to, if you're going to love your neighbors, including your enemies, including your Hindu neighbors, you've got to be able to tell them, hey, guys, what you're doing is debauched. It's evil. It's opposite. It's upside down. You can't do this here. There's nothing loving about normalizing worshiping demons and saying how it's somehow a constitutionally protected right to worship demons. This is a right that you have to worship demons. How can that possibly be loving to your Hindu neighbors? It can't. It can't. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. But in any case, we'll come back to more of this because there's a lot more to cover on this incident. But I wanted to just leave you with that. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.